So Shalom, if you're ready, we can start. Our next speaker is Shalom Eliyahu from Calais, who will speak on growth in abelian semigroups.
Thank you, Mel. Thanks very much for the invitation and for setting up this conference. So I speak about, the title. So in a nutshell, indeed, so there's this classical theorem by Macaulay in 1927, which gives necessary and sufficient conditions for a sequence of non-negative integers to model the sequence of dimensions of standard graded algebra. This is a fundamental result in commutative algebra and algebraic geometry. And later on, it turned out to be fundamental in combinatorics too, because in the work of Macmullen and Stanley, it was used to solve conjectures on polytopes and things like that. As far as additive combinatorics is concerned, its potential applications remained unnoticed for a long time. Here I will use Macaulay's theorem to get best possible upper bounds on the growth of iterated subsets in abelian semigroups. And this is joint work with Ishita Mazumda. So subset we've seen a lot in this conference. You take a commutative group or semigroup, you take two subsets, and so the subset is the sum of all elements, one from A, one from B. And the H-fold iterated subset, when you take A equals B, is A plus A plus A H times. And one important and difficult question if A is finite. So how does the sequence of cardinalities of this iterated subset grow with H? And in particular, one would like to have good upper bounds on the growth of these cardinalities. And so the result I'll speak today, starting from Macaulay, in fact, they use the binomial representations of integers. So let me recall that to start with, because we will use them throughout the talk. So fix an integer I, positive integer I. Now for any integer A, there's a unique expression of A as a sum of I binomials, where in the bottom it's I minus 1 up to 1. And on the top of the binomial, it's a strictly decreasing sequence of non-negative integers. This is unique. And since it's unique, then we do this operation. Let me call that power I to simplify. You just add +1 on the top and on the bottom in every summand. Okay, so here's an example. Fix I equals 6, say, and take A equals 1000. So here is the unique decomposition of 1000 with a 6 binomial decomposition, 12, 6, 8, 5, 6, 4, 4, 3, 2, 2, and 0, 1, which contributes for 0. And now you add +1 everywhere. So it gives you 13, 7, 9, 6, and so on. This is what is denoted 1000 to the power 6. It's not a power, but denoted that way. And when you sum, you get 1827. So remember that figure. I'll use it again in a few minutes. So Hilbert functions. So first of all, what is a standard graded algebra? Well, it's a graded commutative algebra, which is finitely generated by R1 in degree 1. And R0 is just a base field. So another equivalent description, you take the polynomial algebra in n variables with a standard grading, degree of xi equals 1, and you mod out a homogeneous ideal J. That's a standard graded algebra. And the Hilbert function of that object is simply the function which for every I gives you the dimension of the piece of degree I in the algebra. And Macaulay's theorem gives a full characterization of those numerical functions which arise this way. And in the next slide, I'll recall Macaulay's theorem. It uses the binomial decomposition. So here is the theorem. Take a standard graded algebra over K. Denotes di the dimension of the piece of degree I. Then for all I, the piece of degree I plus 1, its dimension is bounded above by this binomial manipulation on the dimension of the piece of degree I. And conversely, this is extremely interesting, and I will use the converse today. Any numerical function starting with 1 and which satisfies this necessary condition, in fact, they do model the Hilbert function of some standard graded algebra. And I will recall the construction of this converse statement because we will use it in the talk. So here is an example. So these are the necessary conditions. Suppose your graded algebra in dimension in degree 6 is of dimension 1000. Then you want to get an upper bound on the piece of degree 7. So the necessary condition tells you that D7 is bounded above by this binomial manipulation. But now we've seen in the previous slide, this is 1827, and hence the piece of degree 7 is of dimension bounded above by 1827. So this is very, very interesting. So as I said, today I will use the converse. So I will recall the construction. So you have your sequence of integers d0, d1, and so on, satisfying the inequalities of Macaulay, and set n equals d1. You take all monomials in x1, xn, and you call MH the set of those monomials of degree H in the standard grading. Now you order the sets lexicographically. The largest one is x1H. The next one is x1H minus 1x2. The next one is this one, and so on. And the last one is xn to the power h. Now a Lex segment in the set of monomials of degree H is L, the set of all monomials of degree H, which are greater than or equal to some fixed monomial of degree H, okay? So this is the first largest monomials in MH. Now this is not difficult. If you have a Lex segment of degree H, you multiply by the variables and you get a Lex segment in degree H plus 1. This is easy. The key point is this one. Lex segments have minimal growth in the following sense. You take a bunch of monomials of degree H, you take a Lex segment. In fact, L is the Lex segment with the same cardinality as your bunch of monomials. Then you multiply both by M1. So you get monomials of degree H plus 1, and thus reaches the lowest possible cardinality for any B. This is the difficult part in the theorem. Now, What about this strange binomial manipulation? Where does it come from? Well, take a bunch of monomials of degree h, denote b bar the complement. And now if you have a leg segment of degree h, multiply by the variables, take the complement, count the number of elements there, then it is linked with the cardinality of the complement with this binomial manipulation. That's the point. And you use that to construct the graded algebra, which will model your sequence, satisfying the Macaulay inequalities. So here is an example. Take D0 up to D7 to be 1, 8, 33, and so on. In degree 6, we get 1000, and degree 7, 18, 27. Well, this is a sequence of integers. It satisfies the Macaulay inequalities. Easy to see. And then by Macaulay's theorem, by the converse, there is a standard graded algebra whose dimension will be given exactly by these numbers. And now I apply for the recipe I gave on the last slide. And in fact, the way to build such an R, you take a polynomial algebra in 8 variables, and you mod out by J, and J is a binomial, is a monomial ideal. You kill these 3 monomials of degree 2, this one of degree 3, this one of degree 4, these 2 of degree 5, and in the quotient. So you measure the dimension of the homogeneous parts in the quotient, and you get exactly that. So that's the recipe I showed in the last slide. Let me give Macaulay's theorem in additive notation. You see the monomials in additive notation is NN, in fact. Take the canonical basis, E1, En. Then for H, of course, HB, the iterated subset, is simply the set of elements in NN whose coordinate sum is equal to H, of course. You take sums of H such guys. And now here is Macaulay's theorem in additive notation. Take A subset of element with coordinate sum equals to H. Take there the leg segment of the same length. Then L plus the basis is in cardinality bounded above by A plus the basis. So again, this reaches the minimum. And you see now this is really a statement in additive combinatorics. So here is the scoop. So unnoticed for decades. Macaulay theorem actually belongs also to additive combinatorics, as shows here. And some nice consequences. So it allows to recover and strengthen Pruneke's inequality. We did that with Ishita Mazumdar by using the necessary condition in Macaulay. And today we use the sufficiency condition to show that in fact the upper bounds are optimal. So let me explain the. So today I will concentrate on the second part. So first of all, bounds on iterated subsets. So this is a paper in arXiv, not yet accepted for some reason. Let A be a non-empty finite subset of an abelian group. The cardinality of the H-fold subset denoted DH. Then D0 is 1. And you recognize here the inequalities of Macaulay for all H. So this is a very powerful upper bound. Here's an instance. If 6A is of cardinality 1000, then 7a is of cardinality at most 1827. Now compare that with Puneke. Puneke gives you 7a is in cardinality bounded above by 1000 to the power 7/6, which is 3162. So this is really much better. And in fact, it is nearly optimal, this one. For Z, in Z. There is a suitable semigroup where this is actually exactly the cardinality of 7a. This is what I'm going to explain now. So exactly, I'm going to prove that these bounds are optimal in the following sense. So I hope the paper will be put on archive in June. I hope so, it's nearly finished. So take any sequence of integers, starting with 1. In fact, here I want positive integers, which is not required in Macaulay theorem. So any sequence of positive integers satisfying the Macaulay conditions. Then there exists an abelian semigroup G, a semigroup, and a subset which such that the cardinalities will exactly realize the sequence. So this is really, these are really optimal upper bounds. Okay, so let me explain the strategy, proof strategy. So you take your sequence of integers satisfying these conditions. We need to construct a suitable abelian semigroup and a suitable set A, and I will do that in multiplicative notation. So start with the polynomial algebra in n variables, where n is D1. So G will be a multiplicative submonoid of a suitable quotient of S by a homogeneous ideal. Take the quotient map from the polynomial algebra to that quotient and look at the variables and look at their images in the quotient. I will note these little x1, little xn. Take that as your set A. And now we want to study the iterated product set. We are in multiplicative notation. A times A times A, H times. And now the problem is to construct a suitable ideal which will do the required job, that is, realize the desired equalities for all H. Now, for an almost sharp realization, I will explain that in the next slide. For an almost sharp realization, we can take a certain monomial ideal. It means an ideal generated by monomials, and in fact, arising from the construction in the sufficiency part of Macaulay theorem, the thing I explained a few slides before. This will give you almost sharp realization. We will not get exactly equality, but almost. So you will see exactly in the next slide. But I claim we can get a sharp realization. So in fact, we'll need to deform that J into an ideal generated not by monomials, but by differences of two monomials, which I'll call J sharp. And to do that properly, we need a Gröbner basis construction so as to preserve the Hilbert function. Okay, so that's the proof strategy. And we will try to realize that concretely. So let me start with the almost sharp realization. So again, you start with your integer sequences. Now, this is what almost sharp means. We would like to have an equality for all H, but with monomial ideals, we can realize just HA between DH and DH plus 1, which is really almost sharp. And for that, a monomial ideal will suffice. So again, take n equals D1, take S the polynomial algebra in n variables, take M the set of monomials in this polynomial algebra. And for the proof of that almost sharp realization, we need to say a few things, to know a few things about monomial ideals, which I will do in the next slide. So take a monomial ideal J, the polynomial algebra, take any polynomial, then those polynomials belongs to J if and only if every monomial actually appearing in the polynomial is itself in J. So this is a bit shocking because it is absolutely not true for any ideal, but for a monomial ideal, that is true. It is shocking, but it is true. And the proof is in fact very simple because J is spanned by monomials and the set of some monomials, and the set of monomials is in fact a vector space basis of the polynomial algebra. So that's an easy exercise. And now here's an interesting proposition. Take a monomial ideal, take the quotient map, then you look at the image of all monomials outside J. Then this is a K basis of the quotient ring. Okay, so the family spans the quotient because the monomial span the algebra, and those monomials in M get killed when you go to the quotient. Now, in fact, this family is also free in the quotient because if you take any combination of the monomials outside J, and if you assume that this is 0 in the quotient, then it means F is in the kernel of pi. The kernel of pi is your monomial ideal J. And then the above lemma here implies that in fact, all those coefficients need to be 0, and hence F is 0, and hence so this is a basis. Sorry to recall basic things like that, but this is more commutative algebra than number theory, so maybe I need to recall a few things like that. Here's a corollary. Take a monomial ideal, take a quotient, take the quotient map, look at the images of the variables, and then the product set for all H. When you have no monomials of degree H in your ideal, you get exactly the dimension. But if this is not true, then you get the dimension, unfortunately, +1. And this is by construction because A is the image of M1. So you do your little computation, and if J is not 0, then you have an extra 0 popping up. And this extra 0 accounts for the +1 here. So let me move on. So the almost sharp realization is this one. So the proof, well, we did everything already. Now you take the monomial ideal constructed in the proof of the sufficiency of Macaulay condition. Then it's a leg segment by construction. You may recall in the quotient, you have exactly the required dimension. Look at the quotient map. Look at the images of the variables. The L is a monomial ideal, and you have exactly what you want. So let me, this was almost sharp. What do you need to do for a sharp realization? So in fact, we claim we can actually realize equality for all H, but we have to work a little bit more. So you take as above the same monomial ideal arising from the proof of Macaulay theorem. So we had this extra 0, which accounts for the discrepancy with DH, and we want to remove this extra 0. So to do that, we deform L into a homogeneous ideal L sharp with the following property. You want, of course, to preserve the dimensions, of course. And what you want is that the images of the monomial is the same as the images of the monomials outside L. And so you can get rid of this troubling extra 0. And how do you do that? Well, you take minimal generators monomial for L. We deform L by taking differences of monomial, where Vi is also monomial of the same degree as Ui. In the Lex order, Vi is smaller than Ui. And the key point is that the set of binomials is in fact a Grobner basis. What's the interest of Grobner basis? Let me go back. The interest of Grobner basis is that you will preserve the dimension, which is a key point. Okay, so of course, to be satisfied, you need a very careful choice of monomials VI so that you can satisfy this condition. But I claim this can be done indeed. And now we conclude as before, you take the images of the variables and you do the computation and you get EH equals DH for all H. And so you are done. So here is just a concluding remark. These upper bounds are sharp relative to all abelian semigroups. But if you want to restrain yourself to groups, what about analogous sharp relative to abelian groups? So this is open and probably very difficult. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Shalom. Are there any questions for our speaker? If not, so again, I thank you for what, at least for me, is a fantastically interesting talk, and the improvements of Plundich's inequality, I think, are quite extraordinary.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you again. We'll resume in about 3 minutes.